When you haven't filmed in a while, it's so weird. Hi, welcome back to another episode of Recreating Recipes from Culinary School, and today we are making crème caramel, which is similar to flan, but the ingredients are simpler than the ingredients that are in flan. I also think flan is a lot creamier than crème caramel. And I have actually made this recipe 3 times. So this is my 3rd time recording this. Why is it the 3rd time I'm recording this, you ask? It's because the first time I recorded it, not the audio, the recording itself, like the video itself, was not good. And I think it's because I was still playing around with the settings and figuring out what worked best for me. And so the second one that I filmed, I thought it was better, and it wasn't, and it was just like bright the entire time. Like my entire face looks really white. So this will be the 3rd and hopefully final time that I'm recording this. I actually left the recipe as is, but no, I'm a liar, because this is the 3rd time that I've made this. I actually adjusted just one portion of the recipe. The recipe calls for whole egg, which I did. I still used whole egg, but I added in an extra egg yolk because I'm hoping that it'll help with the texture. I wasn't a huge fan of the actual texture of this. I don't know if it's just this recipe. So I think that the egg yolk itself won't make a huge difference as far as it still being able to hold its shape. But I'm hoping that it'll make it a little creamier. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first we are gonna make the caramel. And this method freaks me out a little bit, or I get stressed out about it, because it's just pure sugar. We're just making caramel. We're not adding any butter or heavy cream into it. And for me, the butter and heavy cream is always a safety net. So once the sugar is almost done cooking, then you can add the heavy cream or butter in. And then it acts as a safety net, and then you don't have to be so concerned as far as the caramel burning. But because we're not adding anything into it, it does freak me out a little bit. But I also need to keep it at this angle, and or maybe I'll bring you a little bit closer. I can't move the camera at all in between angles, because the last time I did that, I almost burned it twice. And so maybe for this one, I will bring you in a little closer so that you can see the caramel better. But yeah, again, this is one of the things in the culinary world, or in the pastry world, that stresses me out. Okay, so I have a pot, and in here I have just sugar and corn syrup. And so I'm just gonna dump that in. The recipe says to add the water as needed. So I am doing a 3rd recipe for the sugar because I'm just making one. So I'm just gonna add, I don't know, maybe like a teaspoon of water. And I'm gonna go on the stove, and then I will bring you in a little closer for this part. But let's turn on the heat. Okay, I have to talk to you down here. So this also uses the wet method. So with caramel, there's 2 different ways for you to make caramel. You can use the dry method or the wet method. The dry method usually is just the sugar and it doesn't have anything else, which I generally prefer because you can mix it around more that way. But with the wet method, at least the way that I learned, and maybe it's just because at the time that I did make the caramel in culinary school, with the wet method I always messed it up. But now I seem to be doing okay. But with a wet method, or just making caramel in general, they would say that the sugar would crystallize. And so when the sugar crystallizes, you're changing the property of the sugar itself, and it's having a chemical reaction, and it looks like crystal. But once it gets to that point, you can't change it back. It won't re-melt down. And so that's also why I kind of stayed away from this method for a really long time, because I messed it up 3 times in school, and then I really never made it again. But it seems to be doing okay. And also, if you are trying this recipe, please be careful, because sugar burns are one of the worst burns you can get, because sugar will continuously cook even after it's off of the heat. So yeah, so please be careful. So, off the heat. Okay, so the caramel hasn't set yet, but it looks a little something like this. Oop. So if you notice, I didn't use a thermometer for this, and usually you don't, just because caramel, if you were making, what is it? If you were making candy, it would be different, because there would be a lot more corn syrup in this recipe. And so you would use a candy thermometer then, because when you add the corn syrup in, it takes a lot longer for it to cook. But with caramel, you don't really use a thermometer, just because it goes really fast. And so by the time you're checking the temperature, it'll probably always be burnt. So usually just go by color. So once it hits, like right before it's about to hit this amber color, that's usually when I take it off of the heat. But yeah, so I'm gonna let that set. I poured the extra here. I don't think this is burned. Oh, it's so hot. The last couple of times I did burn it, but this doesn't smell burnt. Maybe I'll taste it afterwards. But yeah, so we finished the caramel. Let's go ahead and make the cream. I'm gonna put this in the sink, because also you need to, when you soak it, I'm saying things and I don't know what I'm saying. I'm going to put this in the sink, because if it sets and I don't put it in the sink now, then it'll be a pain in the ass to clean. So I'm gonna put it in the sink now. After you make the caramel, put it in the sink, add your water, it'll melt the sugar. You'll thank me later. It won't be a pain to clean. Okay, so the next thing we're gonna make is the custard part for our creme caramel. And the method that we're using is really similar to the creme brulee recipe and also the pastry cream recipe. As I mentioned before in a couple of videos, maybe just in 1 or 2 for both of those recipes, a lot of the French patisserie methods or techniques for certain recipes are the same, just with different quantities of ingredients. So again, this is another simple recipe. I have my milk. I'm gonna add it into the pot, and my vanilla extract. Okay, so I'm gonna warm that up until it hits a simmer. And then in my bowl, also I like to switch around the angle so that you guys can see, and it keeps a long video kind of interesting. But if you guys don't care, can someone give me some feedback on that? What your thoughts are? Do you like the angles? Does it matter? Should I just leave it here and bring it in closer? I don't know. We're experimenting. So let me know your thoughts. Okay, so I have the egg and sugar. And we're just gonna whisk that in. Okay. Okay, so my milk has just hit a simmer. Because it's such a, I'm doing a half recipe, so the quantity is quite low. So I'm just going to whisk this in. Okay. And then we have to strain it. Oh, I don't know if it'll stay because because the top part is too heavy. Okay, there we go. All right, so I'm just gonna strain that in. Okay, so I have filled it up just until the inside lip of the ramekin itself, because the last time I made these, I did split this half recipe into 2 separate ramekins, but they ended up really short. They were like maybe 3/4 of an inch, half an inch tall. So I wanted them to be a bit taller, which is why I just filled one. But I do have some custard left, so I think I will leave that and kind of see how this recipe turned out first. But we are going to do this in a water bath, always using warm water. I do need to grab some warm water, but otherwise let's put this in the oven. Okay, so the creme caramel is in the oven. I am going to leave it in for about 20 minutes before I check on them. These do take a little bit longer than the creme brulee, I've noticed. So I think maybe it'll take like 30 minutes or so, but I'm gonna leave them in for 20 minutes first, and then I'll check to see what it looks like and then adjust from there. So yeah, I will show you when it's time for that. Okay, so it's been about 20 minutes. It's still not ready, but I'm gonna show you what it looks like right now. So it's still quite liquidy. Oh, that was hot. It was still quite liquidy. So I need it to be less jiggly like that, more like Jello. Okay, so it's been in there for 5 minutes longer. It's less watery, the jiggle of it. I'm gonna show you what it looks like, but it does need a little more time. So if we take a look, it's still a little too watery. So I wanted to have more of that Jello-like consistency, which I guess it does, but for this it does need to be quite set because it does need to come out of the ramekin whole, and we don't want it to go like so yeah, I'm gonna keep it in for a couple more minutes. So as of now, it's been in there for already 30 minutes. So it's gonna need a little more time. Okay, so the creme caramel has come out of the oven. It has that Jello-like jiggle to it. And so I need to let this set down completely before I try to take it out of the ramekin. And then once it is completely cooled, we will give it a taste. Or I guess I will give it a taste and let you know what I think about it. Okay, so it has been a few hours now and the creme caramel is all cooled down. So we are going to take it out of the ramekin. I'm just gonna score the edges here. Ooh, this is already way, the other 2 times that I had made this, it was a lot stickier on the outsides, but I don't know if the extra egg yolk helped, but yeah, it was a lot smoother. Also, every time I do this part, have you guys seen, I saw it on TikTok or Instagram, there's a like an older gentleman in Japan who owns, I think they call it pudding, because I think it's like a version, I think it's closer to flan probably what they make. But he does this like little swirly action, and I tried it once and it worked. And for the longest time I thought, oh, okay, he's just doing this for like show, so it looks cute. But it works, you guys. Okay. Did I? Sorry. Hold on. Now I'm focusing. Did I? No? I got it. Okay. So it's like you swirl it and then you hear it unsuction. But anyway. Okay. I hope it unsuction. Ah! Okay. Look at, oh wait, sorry. I do this all the time. Look at it. It's so cute. Okay, so this side is a little underdone, I think. Because, can you see? Hold on, let me. Sometimes it doesn't focus very well on things that are brighter in color. Okay, so here it's a little lopsided. I could have probably left it in just for a little bit longer. The two other times that I took it out of the oven, it didn't really have as much of a jiggle, but I did want to test it out with this one so it had more of a jello-like jiggle. Oh, I forgot to get a spoon. Hold on. I could have probably left this in for probably 2 or 3 more minutes before I pulled it out. So I guess with creme caramels, they have to be completely set, whereas creme brulee, it's supposed to have more of like a movement, like a jiggle to it. I don't know why jiggle is the only word I seem to be using for this. But anyway, let's give it a taste. It already does feel a lot smoother than the first one I made. Okay. Yeah, I like this texture way better. The top of it is still very overcooked, should I say? I think it's because the oven that I have works like an air fryer. But the inside texture is really nice. Wow, I'm actually really enjoying this. The 2 other times I made it, I didn't like it that much. So, the texture is a lot softer, which is what I like. But the downside is that because I did underbake this a little bit, it's not holding its shape as well. So, if I bake this longer, I would imagine that the texture would be more firm, which I'm not a huge fan of. And the reason why I'm not a huge fan of it is because it reminds me of like when you boil an egg and the egg white part of it, that's what it reminds me of. And so I don't feel like when I'm eating a boiled egg, I know that that's what the texture is going to be like. But when I'm eating a dessert, especially something that's meant to be more custard-like, I would like it for it to be smoother. And so I don't like to associate those two things together, but that's just my personal preference. For me, it's a texture thing. But yeah, if you try this recipe, I will also add that in on the side to add in an extra egg yolk if you do want to make it. But I think I'll probably put the full recipe because the half recipe that I did really only makes 1, which I guess I could have just filled it up all the way to the top, but I was worried that when you have to take it out because of the lip, it wouldn't come out well. Wow, I am pleasantly surprised by that. That was really nice. That was a good call on my part. Okay. Anyway, I enjoyed that way more than I thought I was going to, but I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you do try out the recipe, please don't forget to leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on it. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next episode. Bye.